Coming up next, the story of two of the most enigmatic artists of the rock era, linked by a classic track that wasn't fully appreciated until it became the theme song for a groundbreaking, provocative film. Actually, an X-rated film, if you can believe that. The song was a smash hit. It even won a Grammy. The original creator of the song was a cult hero who retreated from the spotlight, while the artist who turned it into a pop smash, it was a brilliant yet erratic singer-songwriter whose recklessness ultimately derailed his promising career. This guy really was a genius. Both artists grapple with intense personal demons, yet they captivated the rock era by sharing a song that brought us infinite joy and really a sense of freedom. Then this cerebral artist turned around and wrote one of the funniest novelty songs of the time. The story of one of the most interesting singer-songwriters of the rock era is coming up next on Professor of Rock. Hey music junkies, Professor of Rock, always here to celebrate the greatest artists and the greatest songs of all time, especially today. You know, if you remember playing with walkie-talkies growing up, talking to each other back and forth, you'll dig this channel of deep musical nostalgia. Make sure to subscribe right now. Click the red button, click the bell so you always know when our latest and greatest come out. We have some great interviews coming up. Also, check us out on Patreon. We have even more content there. So it's time for another edition of our series, The New Standards. This is a show that takes an in-depth look into songs that really transcend genre. They transcend decade, fads, everything. Songs that are landmarks in our culture and within our society. Harry Nilsson was a complicated man, admired by his peers for his raw talent and his, I don't give a damn independent spirit. He was loved by fans for the flashes of genius he displayed when he chose to display it. The sheer unpredictability of Harry Nilsson was part of what made him so fascinating. Indeed, he was a mercurial figure with many facets to his character. I'm excited for this episode because on this, we're going to tell the tale of two different Nilssons. The serious craftsman who was a master song interpreter with an uncanny authenticity, and the clever satirist who could turn the lyric of a dark comedy into a pop culture novelty hit. We're going to start with the story behind his reimagining of an obscure folk song that initially went nowhere. But with the iconic placement in a highly acclaimed movie, it became Nilsson's breakout smash. Everybody's Talkin', from the motion picture soundtrack of the classic 1969 film Midnight Cowboy.
Everybody's talking at me. I don't hear words.
Now, before Harry Nilsson discovered Everybody's Talkin', it had already been released as a single as far back as 1966 by the song's composer, the late Fred Neil.
Everybody's talking at me. I don't hear.
And it was tossed aside after it failed to move the needle. Everybody's Talkin' was Fred Neil's way of expressing his desire to leave the concrete jungle of the city and retreat to a peaceful, serene existence. Fred's original version came together towards the end of the session for his self-titled LP. It was his debut LP, actually. Neil was eager to wrap up the album and return to his home in Miami. Manager Herb Cohen promised Neil that if he wrote and recorded one final track, he could leave. With that incentive, Neil retreated to a nearby bathroom in the studio. 5 minutes later, he emerged with a new composition, a succinct ballad with just 2 verses and a chorus, repeating one verse and the chorus. The song expressed his longing to go home, a place where the sun keeps shining in the pouring rain.
Keep shining through the pouring rain.
Now, the song was cut fast, in one take, and Cohen, he made good on his promise. He sang it once, and then we packed up and I took him to the airport to fly back to Florida. That's what Cohen said.
Sailing on a summer breeze.
Fred, too, was a complicated person with a dark side. There was something mysterious about his persona that attracted a devoted cult following, and it left a big impression on some very notable artists. Bob Dylan and John Sebastian, who sang for the Lovin' Spoonful, those were 2 of the artists that have vivid memories of Fred Neil. Back in the early 60s, Bob Dylan used to play at a place called Cafe Wha. It opened at noon and it closed at 6 in the morning. Bob Dylan painted the picture of the club in a 1984 interview when he said, and I quote, "There was a nonstop flow of people, mostly tourists looking for beatniks in the village. Around 5 groups would play there. I used to perform with Fred Neil. John Sebastian also played at Cafe Wah with Fred Neil. It was the voice that got you first, that honey-laden baritone with southern lilt. That's what John would say. Fred would slump over the mic with his big fat 12-string guitar and the walls would move. Waitresses would melt in their tracks, is what John Sebastian would say about it.
I'm going where the sun keeps shining.
Fred Neil's death was as low-key as his life was. On July 7, 2001, police in Summerland Key, Florida, they responded to an emergency call at his house, and they found Fred unconscious on the floor with just $13 in his wallet and a last will and testament on the nightstand by his bed. He'd actually been battling skin cancer and was scheduled to begin chemotherapy treatments in, I think, 9 days later. He was pronounced dead of natural causes at 65 years of age. Right up to his death, Fred Neil remained a mystery, even to those who knew and worked with him. After moving back to Florida, Fred Neil focused entirely on the Dolphin Project, a nonprofit dolphin rescue organization he founded in 1970 with marine biologist Richard O'Barry, who had previously trained dolphins for the Flipper TV series. Fred was the backbone of that cause. He provided unwavering support for their mission. Many were puzzled by his withdrawal from creating music. No one was really sure if he just despised the music business or if he was worried that he wouldn't measure up to his earlier work. However, everyone agreed on one thing. Neil never thought a whole lot of Everybody's Talking. He didn't think it was that good, despite its enduring popularity and the steady income that generated from it. He never gave the song any credence at all. Herb Cohen revealed, and I quote, "It was just a way to get out of the studio and get the hell out of LA. He just didn't like it." While looking for material to record for his third album, Harry Nilsson instantly heard the hit potential when record producer Rick Gerard played him Fred Neil's original version of Everybody's Talking. Gerard intended to pass the song along to a group called Stone Country, but Harry Nilsson snaked it for his Aerial Ballet album in 1968, 2 years after Fred Neil released it. The album title, Aerial Ballet, that was inspired by Harry's Swedish grandparents who were circus performers and dancers known for their aerial ballet. The recording of Everybody's Talking for Harry's LP featured some heavy session players. You got Al Casey, he played the acoustic guitars, Mike Melvoin on the piano. Alfred Lustgarten led a sextet of violinists. The ubiquitous Larry Knechtel and Jim Gordon were on bass and drums, respectively. Now, the banjo parts on the track were performed by Randy Searly Sterling, who actually was uncredited for some reason. Rick Gerard gave Harry complete freedom on his vocal delivery on Everybody's Talking.
Suits my clothes.
Backed by a brilliant arrangement from George Tipton, which actually quickened the tempo, but retained Neil's guitar figure, and introduced a high note from the string section that soared at the bridge. Nilsson delivered a vocal performance that exuded both melancholy and liberation. His voice detached from reality and it soared within his dreams. Harry incorporated a little Hank Williams-style yodeling in the bridge and the leap into falsetto on I Won't Let You. Well, I'll let him sing it. That catapulted the song to a whole other level. After 3 takes, Harry nailed the vocal. His then girlfriend and future wife, Diane Clotworthy, who was in the studio during the recording session, called it a truly magical moment. Everyone in the studio believed they had captured something really special. As Harry was leaving the studio, Gerard told him, "Be really careful crossing the street. We haven't finished the overdubs yet." Again, they knew they had something just immaculate.
Skipping over the ocean like a stone.
After more than a half of a decade of struggling to break into the songwriting world, Harry Nilsson maintained his day job as a computer programmer at Security First National Bank in LA. When Aerial Ballet wasn't moving in the record stores and his interpretation of Everybody's Talking fizzled at number 113 on the Billboard Bubbling Under chart, it kind of looked like Harry would have to hold on to some kind of a job away from the music business, even though going back to the bank would have been a last resort. The dismal response from the public for Everybody's Talkin', it really surprised Nilsson and Gerard. They truly felt that they had a surefire hit here. A year after the release of Aerial Ballet, something truly amazing happened for Harry Nilsson. Director John Schlesinger, he chose Harry's version of Everybody's Talkin' as the theme song for the film Midnight Cowboy.
Not bad for a cowboy.
Not only was it the theme song, it was the soundtrack that permeated throughout the movie. I mean, really, if you've seen Midnight Cowboy, it's hard to imagine the film without Everybody's Talkin'. It just goes side by side with the film. I mean, it was synonymous with the storyline as much as the lead characters played by Jon Voight and Dustin Hoffman. Brilliant performances in this film.
Hey, I'm walking here! I'm walking here!
Although the song had no heat at all at the time, Schlesinger, he had a gut feeling about the song's relevance to the subject matter of Midnight Cowboy. Everybody's Talkin', it was really used as a placeholder at first while Schlesinger searched for the perfect theme song. He was also considering Bob Dylan's Lay Lady Lay.
Lay, lady, lay, lay across my big brain.
And then there was Randy Newman's Cowboy.
Cowboy.
Joni Mitchell's Midnight Cowboy.
Here comes the midnight cowboy.
And Harry Nilsson's composition that he wrote for the movie Guess the Lord Must Be in New York City.
The Lord must be in New York City.
That was all before selecting Everybody's Talkin' for sure. I mean, it must have seemed like a long shot, right? A theme song to an X-rated movie in the 60s. But Midnight Cowboy, it quickly became a cult classic. It did well at the box office. It was one of the most acclaimed films at the 1970 Academy Awards. I mean, it won Best Picture, Best Director, and Best Adapted Screenplay.
The winner is Midnight Cowboy.
It remains the only X-rated film to win Best Picture. Of course, back then it was called X-rated instead of NC-17. So to piggyback on the popularity of Midnight Cowboy, the song was re-released as a single in 1969, and it became the hit that those who created Harry's version were convinced it would be. Everybody's Talking, that peaked at number 6 on the Billboard Hot 100, and it moved all the way to number 2 on the Billboard Easy Listening chart. How about that? The single scaled to number 1 in Canada, it went to number 23 in the UK, number 11 in South Africa, and number 9 in Sweden. So it hit all over.
Only the echoes of my mind.
Harry even collected the Grammy Award. I think it was for Best Contemporary Vocal Performance by a Male Singer for Everybody's Talking at the 1970 ceremony. And the song's prominence in Midnight Cowboy helped establish his career as a countercultural poet. Although Harry's biggest singles, Everybody's Talking and Peter Ham's Without You, weren't written by the prolific singer-songwriter, the exposure of the former generated new fans for the artist that became known simply as Nilsson, right? On the songs that he did compose, Nilsson could inject the different facets of his personality. He had the versatility to write deeply personal songs, like 1941, about his father's abandonment.
By 1944, the father walks right out the door.
The poignant theme of isolation in One.
One is the loneliest number that you'll ever do.
And even delve into musical comedy, with projects like the film Son of Dracula, where he starred as Count Down alongside Ringo Starr as Merlin.
Son of Dracula is Nilsson at his hottest. Ringo at his magical magnificence.
There was lingering pain from Nilsson's childhood that came out in a lot of his songs. His father abandoning him and his mother when he was 3 was the root of most of his suppressed suffering. And when his father left, his mother, who struggled with alcoholism, was not able to take care of the family financially or emotionally. I mean, there were days when they didn't have anything to eat at all. Harry remembers being so desperate for food that he actually ate dog food out of a can. The low point of his childhood was when he held up a liquor store when he was just 15, using his pointed index finger under his coat to frighten the on-duty clerk into giving him $60 from the cash register. He had a tough childhood, and it was the source of his legendary mood swings and likely what fueled the volatility of his songwriting, really. Harry's unique brand of satirical, dark humor was perhaps best captured in pop culture on his highest-charting self-penned tune, Coconut, the novelty tune that dropped as the third single from Harry's 1971 album, Nilsson Schmilsson. The single was on the Billboard chart for nearly 4 months. It rose to number 8 on the Billboard Hot 100, and it went to number 5 in Canada. You got one of the most cerebral musicians, most cerebral singer-songwriters on the planet at the time, and he writes this great novelty hit. I love it. Coconut tells the story of a girl experiencing stomach issues after drinking lime and coconut. In her distress, she calls her doctor late at night, and he advises her to take a bit of the hair of the dog, to make her feel better.
Put the lime in the coconut and call me in the morning.
Richard Perry, the producer of Nilsson Schmilsson, initially heard Harry play Coconut straight through on guitar with his regular singing voice. Now, in the brilliant documentary, Who is Harry Nilsson? Why is everybody talking about him? Which you should all see for sure. I'll link to it below. Richard reflected on the moment that he heard the first crack at the song. He said, I thought to myself, this song could be like a little animated cartoon. There are at least 3 different characters in it. And then Perry suggested that Harry try using different voices for the narrator, the girl, and the doctor. Harry Nilsson immediately embraced this idea, delivering a theatrical performance that transformed the song really into a novelty classic. If you want to play a noisemaker at your next house party or get-together, play Coconut and watch the reaction of all your guests. It doesn't matter whether someone has heard the song or not, they're going to freak out. That's how it is. Now, Richard Perry, who was one of the most highly successful producers of the rock era, he expressed regret that he only had the opportunity to produce one album with Harry Nilsson. Nilsson Schmilsson was by far Harry's most successful. Many call it one of the finest of the 70s. I sure think it is. Perry lamented that if Nilsson hadn't succumbed to his personal struggles shortly thereafter, he believed he could have achieved the same level of success as an Elton John or James Taylor. Richard was not alone in his assessment of Harry Nilsson's potential greatness. Many of Harry's peers frequently gave him props as being kind of an underappreciated genius. It really was. As a resident of Los Angeles, Nilsson was neighbors with Mickey Dolenz, and he just finished a successful run on the television sitcom The Monkees, and he topped the pop charts, of course. Both Nilsson and Dolenz, they avoided touring, and that left them plenty of free time to get into lots of trouble. They bonded over their shared interest in narcotics and soon gathered a group of like-minded rabble-rousers that dubbed themselves the Hollywood Vampires. This crew included Alice Cooper, Ringo Starr, John Lennon, Keith Moon, and others, and they became notorious for their antics in the LA nightlife scene, raising hell with Harry. In our episode highlighting Nilsson's powerful rendition of Without You that we released about a year and a half ago, we recounted the infamous night when Nilsson and John Lennon were ejected from the Troubadour Club in West Hollywood during a Smothers Brothers reunion show. If you remember that, including continuous heckling of the comedians on stage, led to their infamous removal, with security grabbing John and Harry by the collar and muscling them to the door. The recording session for 74's Pussycats took a dark turn. Despite John Lennon's disciplined approach amid his own struggles with heavy drinking, Nilsson battling with secret alcohol and cocaine abuse, that's where he hit rock bottom. His vocal cords were bleeding, yet he couldn't bring himself to confide in Lennon, his idol, about his deteriorating condition. Some have attributed Lennon with exacerbating Nilsson's vocal cord issues, supposedly during a Primal Scream contest. However, John Lennon later redeemed himself by personally lobbying RCA executives to secure Nilsson a multi-million-dollar contract, banking on Nilsson's promise to deliver more hit records. When Harry Nilsson passed away from a heart attack at the age of 52 in 1994, obituaries painted a picture of an artist who, despite early Grammy-winning success, experienced a downward spiral of self-destruction and missed opportunities to fully capitalize on his immense potential. As Richard Perry noted, it's kind of ironic that Harry's funeral procession was conducted the same day as the disastrous Northridge earthquake. The cover of Nilsson Schmilsson, featuring a disheveled Nilsson holding a hash pipe in the other, perfectly illustrates the blend of humor and indifference that defined the artistry of Harry Nilsson. Noel Murray of the entertainment website AV Club described Harry as a musician's musician, celebrated for his daring arrangements, prioritizing his artistic vision over commercial demands, and his irreverent attitude towards himself, culture, and showbiz standards. I agree with that. He was not built for conventionalism. That's for damn sure. Harry Nilsson, he didn't answer to anybody. In 1999, Nilsson's heralded interpretation of Everybody's Talkin' was inducted into the Grammy Hall of Fame. But if Harry were alive when the honor was bestowed, he most certainly would have acknowledged Fred Neil's prototype with heartfelt gratitude. It was the song that changed the trajectory of his career. Fred Neil's vocals on the original recording of Everybody's Talkin' are weighty, they're heartfelt, and they're really stark, evoking a haunting quality that some describe as kind of spooky. It's a pinnacle of folk music teetering on the edge of guitar rock, really. Fred, who was hesitant to tour and turned his back on a pursuit for fame, he presents a raw authenticity that makes his conception a classic, really in its own right. Nilsson, too, as I said, refused to tour, but in contrast to Fred, Harry refined Everybody's Talkin' with intricate guitar melodies, showcasing his expansive 4-octave vocal range and accelerating the tempo with crisp snare drumming, also a dynamic keyboard and a wistful string arrangement.
My love behind.
Nilsson's definitive version of Everybody's Talkin', it just captures the essence of a breezy road trip. City lights fading in the rearview mirror and the excitement of the open road unfolding before us. This song captures a sense of fleeting tranquility and intrigue destined to fade too soon. Just like the lives of Harry Nilsson and Fred Neil, the journeys of both artists were short, but oh so sweet.
I won't let you leave my love behind.
And over 50 years after both versions were recorded, we can hear the words Fred and Harry were singing in Everybody's Talking so resoundingly. The song will always ring in the echoes of our minds.
The echoes of my mind.
Thanks so much for watching. Leave us a comment about Harry Nilsson and Fred Neil's classic heartfelt song. This is one of the greatest songs ever. I just think Harry Nilsson is such an underrated genius. He's somebody that we need to appreciate. Let's have a great discussion below about this incredible artist, the memories of the song. Coconut, what a great song. If you like our content, we invite you to subscribe below. We'd love to have you as part of our community. Until next time, 3 chords and the truth, my friends.